Hey guys, didn't want to take a look at the best case scenario for the Democratic Party for the 2022 Senate races, and that is the Democratic Party winning 58 seats in the Senate over the GOP. That would mean that they would have to pick up 8 seats off of the 2020 map. So this is definitely possible. In 2008, the Democrats were able to win a total of 59 seats in the Senate. So basically, they were one short of a supermajority in the Senate in 2008. I mean, they won races in Arkansas, they won in Louisiana. They won in West Virginia and states like South Dakota and Montana in 2008. 2022 is not expected to be a 2008 year for the Democrats. This was, of course, with the election of Barack Obama, who was a once-in-a-lifetime candidate, and the map was just basically very, very favorable for them in general. But for 2022, there are definitely many seats that Republicans are pretty vulnerable in, and there are really many, many Republican retirements that could make keeping some of these seats pretty difficult for the GOP in 2022. So before we get started, make sure to join my Discord server if you have not. The link, which is at the very top of the description below. A pretty cool mock government on there, so make sure you join that if you have not. But I'm going to start off by filling in these solid blue states. These are states that Democrats are 100% going to win. There's no way they're going to lose these states. And for the GOP, I will be doing the same. North and South Dakota definitely going to be blue. Kansas as well. They're pretty strong incumbents in these states here. South Carolina with Tim Scott definitely going to win re-election. Kentucky and Indiana as well. And the final state on this map being Alabama, of course, where there is a retiring Republican there. I believe the retiring Republican is Richard Shelby, but still, it's going to be red no matter what. I mean, Tommy Tuberville defeated incumbent Doug Jones by 20% in 2020. So it's going to be 42-45 from these solid states. Now, I'm going to be using the colors basically. Blue is definitely going to win. This is going to be by percentage chance of winning, so likely is going to be, they have a good chance at winning. And then the lean color here would be they have a very, very okay chance, but it could really go either way. And then tilt is definitely, it's going to be a reach for the Democratic Party, but it's still definitely possible and much more possible than these red states on this map. So the first state that is pretty much solid for the Democrats is Colorado. I'm going to actually give that solid color just because they're pretty much going to win this race. You have Michael Bennet, who is the incumbent. Michael Bennet isn't too strong of a candidate, but it's still Colorado. He won his first election in 2010, where he won 48% of the vote. In 2016, he was reelected by around 5%, and this was when Hillary Clinton won in 2016 over Donald Trump in Colorado by less than 5%. So Michael Bennet still did do better than Hillary Clinton, but if you look at the current, the current state of Colorado in 2020, John Hickenlooper won by 9.3% in the Senate level, and then for Joe Biden in 2020, he actually won Colorado by 13.5%. So it's pretty much going to be a blue state, but the margin could go a little bit up and down for Michael Bennet. The next state that the Democrats do have to win, they have to hold on to their seat in the state of Nevada. Nevada, the incumbent is Catherine Cortez Masto. As you can see, she won her first election in 2016, won basically only Clark County, which is where Las Vegas is located, lost every other county to Joe Heck, but Catherine Cortez Masto, definitely a pretty strong candidate for Nevada. There's really no flaws about her, nothing too scandalous, and nothing too controversial about her either. She is a Democrat, definitely votes with the Democrats almost all the time. And for Cortez Masto, as an incumbent, she definitely does have a better chance at winning than she did as a first timer with an open seat in 2016. This, of course, was after the retirement of Harry Reid, who is the former Senate Majority Leader for the Democrats and Senate Minority Leader whenever the Democrats controlled the Senate. So Catherine Cortez Masto going to win re-election. That's definitely a must for them, and it's pretty likely that they actually do. I'm going to make this the likely color because these are both pretty likely to occur, and so, I mean, looking at the betting odds, definitely Democrats do have the advantage there. The next state I want to take a look at is the state of Arizona. So another state in this area here. I don't know why I filled it in earlier, but in the state of Arizona, this is going to be a seat that's currently held by Mark Kelly, and Mark Kelly is currently expected to definitely win re-election. He's a very strong candidate for Arizona. He won by 2.4% over Martha McSally, who was the incumbent senator. So basically, Martha McSally lost in 2018. So she ran for Senate in 2018. She lost to Kirsten Sinema, And then after that, after John McCain unfortunately passed away, she was appointed in 2019 to fill the vacancy left by John McCain, which is why there was a special election in 2020 where Mark Kelly actually defeated Martha McSally, who was the appointed incumbent, which is why Mark Kelly is now in the Senate and will be facing re-election in 2022. This is a race that Mark Kelly is definitely expected to win as of right now. As you can see, 64-37, and Mark Kelly just in general is a pretty strong candidate. He's a former astronaut, and he's pretty popular among the people of Arizona. Definitely a lot more popular than Kyrsten Sinema, who is getting less and less popular in her home state. So this is going to be a state that Democrats must win and must hold on to. The next state is the state of Pennsylvania. I do think that Democrats will do very well in Pennsylvania. This is really only a result of John Fetterman being the Democratic nominee. So John Fetterman basically is a shoo-in for Pennsylvania at this point for the Democratic nomination. The Republican nomination is still up in the air, but for the Democrats, it's going to be Lieutenant Governor, the current Lieutenant Governor, John Fetterman, who is very popular, and he can definitely even defeat Pat Toomey, but Pat Toomey is retiring. He's definitely one of the more moderate senators in the Senate. He did vote to impeach Donald Trump, but for Pat Toomey, he will be retiring, which I think would be good. I think that it would be a little bit embarrassing for him to lose in 2022 against John Fetterman, but John Fetterman, I think, will be able to carry Democrats to a victory in Pennsylvania. Definitely very, very likely, and I think that they have a higher chance at flipping Pennsylvania. See that Joe Biden won by 1.2%. Joe Biden won the state of Pennsylvania by 1.2% in 2020 in the presidential election, of course, after Trump flipped it in 2016. But looking at New Hampshire, I do think Democrats have a higher chance at flipping Pennsylvania than do at holding on to New Hampshire. In the state of New Hampshire, the race is currently pretty close. So it's going to be between Maggie Hassan and potentially Chris Sununu. Although Chris Sununu has not announced, he's very open to the idea, and 2022 would be a very good year for him to run in. So essentially, he's the only Republican that can defeat incumbent Maggie Hassan. Maggie Hassan only won by 0.2%, but she won against incumbent Kelly Ayotte, who was running for re-election in 2016. So she defeated an incumbent, and she did win only by 0.14% in 2016. But for Chris Sununu, I mean, he is a very strong candidate. So in 2020, you did have a Senate race here. Jeanne Shaheen, because there were no strong Republicans, Jeanne Shaheen won by 15%. So if there's really no strong Republican, Maggie Hassan will have no trouble winning. But, you know, she won by 15.6%. Now, you got to remember that Senate elections, not Senate, but governor elections in New Hampshire are held every 2 years. And Chris Sununu was just reelected in 2020, and he won 65% of the vote. He won by 32% on the same ballot that a Democrat in not Maggie Hassan, but a Democrat in Jeanne Shaheen was able to win by just 15%. So Jeanne Shaheen wins by 15%, but Chris Sununu on the same ballot wins by 65%, or not, wins by 32%, wins 65% of the vote. So It's going to be difficult for Maggie Hassan. She is currently favored at 57.44 in the betting odds, but if she does really want to win, she's going to have to work for that seat. And so this puts Democrats up at 50. This is basically where they are, except they flip Pennsylvania, and I have not talked about Georgia yet. In the next state we'll be talking about is the state of Georgia, currently held by Raphael Warnock. So I'm going to go into this lighter color. I think these are states that definitely both parties could win. But, you know, if things do go well for Democrats, they could really honestly win all of them. But for these likely states, these are states that Democrats definitely have the clear advantage in. So for the state of Georgia, it's currently held by Raphael Warnock. Raphael Warnock won his first election in 2020. It was a special election against Kelly Loeffler, who was appointed just a year before the 2020 election, and basically she was appointed to fill the vacancy left by Johnny Isakson. She was the richest member of the Senate, worth almost $1 billion, and gained a lot of money as a result of the pandemic, whether it's stock trading, basically with David Perdue. And so Kelly Loeffler lost her first election because she was up for a special election because she was appointed, but Kelly Loeffler did lose to Raphael Warnock, who is now the incumbent, and Warnock is expected to face Herschel Walker. So Herschel Walker is currently the front runner for the GOP nomination. He's definitely the strongest Republican in this field, and him winning would definitely make it harder for the Democrats He's also something that Donald Trump does support. So Doug Collins used to be the front runner, but he has dropped out. He came in third in 2020. He ran as a Republican, split the ticket with Kelly Loeffler. But for Doug Collins, he is definitely dropping out. He has already announced that. And Herschel Walker, if he wins, he'll be able to do pretty well. I think he does have a chance at defeating Warnock, but I would say Warnock still definitely does have the advantage. He is the recently elected incumbent, and so this puts Democrats up at 51. They would also have to, win in Wisconsin. And this was to say that Joe Biden won on the presidential election in 2020, won it by 0.63%, not the strongest of margins, but still definitely a win. And in Wisconsin, Ron Johnson is the incumbent. He is also expected to possibly retire. He did announce that he would retire in 2022 when he ran for re-election in 2016, but he did change his mind on that fact. However, Ron Johnson would not be as strong as he was in 2016, because in 2016, he was definitely not as radical as he is right now. He's definitely a lot more to the right and a lot more Trump supporting than he was when he ran for re-election in 2016. He defeated Russ Feingold, who he defeated as well in 2010, but by a little bit of a larger margin. So for Ron Johnson, he's going to have to face some pretty tough Democrats. Sarah Godlewski definitely, I think, will pose a pretty strong challenge. She is currently the treasurer of the state of Wisconsin. I mean, this race is not set in stone. You can see all the ups and downs that these candidates have been having. I mean, Ron Kind was at one point pretty far ahead of the others, but his chances have dropped significantly over the last couple of days. So the Democratic nomination for Senate in Wisconsin is still up in the air, and Republicans maybe, but Ron Johnson has not decided on whether or not he will run for re-election. We will have to hear from him to really make a determining, to really make a better determination of this race, because Ron Johnson, I do think, as the incumbent, would be the strongest candidate that Republicans can put up. So they would have to flip that, but they do also have another Republican that is definitely retiring in North Carolina. Richard Burr is going to retire in 2022. Richard Burr basically in 2016 won re-election by around over 5%, winning his third term. He will not be running for a fourth term in 2022. He has announced that he, is definitely going to retire. And so this puts, both Democrats and Republicans having to scramble for a nominee, because Cal Cunningham, who in 2020 lost to Tom Tillis after a sexting scandal, she basically lost. I do think that's the reason why he lost. I do think Cal Cunningham could have been in the Senate if he did not have that last-minute scandal against Tom Tillis, who was a pretty weak candidate. But if Republicans put up someone weak again, they could be very vulnerable. And right now, this is the list of the top Republicans that are vying the nomination. Pat McCrory, he's the former governor who lost re-election in 2016 to Roy Cooper. Laura Trump, who really has no strong connections to the state. She's from the state, but she really is not going to resonate with voters as well. She may be the niece, or the daughter-in-law of Donald Trump, but Donald Trump only won the state by 1.3%, and Laura Trump still is not Donald Trump. Again, it's a pretty messy primary. Pat McCrory now leads, but before, so Mark Walker had a very, very high chance at winning. So it's still up in the air who wins this race, but definitely these top two candidates are not good for the GOP. And so this is why Democrats have a pretty good chance of winning North Carolina. And the final state I have in this lean category is the state of Missouri. So for the state of Missouri, currently, the Republicans are trying to nominate Eric Greitens. He is someone that could do well among the Republicans, but among the Democrats and independents, he's definitely a very weak candidate. So he's the former governor as well, another former governor, and he had to resign due to sexual blackmail. And it was something that the Republican Party in the state said could definitely be true, and he did end up resigning. And he basically, it was not pretty for him, and it's going to be an issue for him if he does become the nominee, because he's going to have to win over those voters who saw him resign due to allegations of sexual blackmail. He didn't even try to fight it too much. But in 2016, Roy Blunt, who's the incumbent, who is retiring, so that's why there is a GOP nomination here. Roy Blunt barely defeated Jason Kander, who was a very strong candidate. He's probably not going to be running in 2022. He had PTSD. He suffered from that, so he had to drop out of the Kansas City mayoral race, which he was planning on running in 2020, I believe. So for Jason Kander, although he was a very strong candidate, he's not going to be running in 2022. Claire McCaskill is no longer interested in running either. So it's still up in the air who the Democrats are going to nominate to run against, one of these two candidates, either Eric Greitens or Eric Schmidt. But definitely, with how close it was in 2016. And, there was a Democrat there. Just in 2018, there's a Democrat in Clara McCaskill in Missouri. So definitely it's a state that Democrats could win, but not too likely. In the final four, I have Iowa, Ohio, Florida, and Arizona. So Iowa would have to be Chuck Grassley retiring. He's going to have to retire for this to actually occur. In Ohio, Rob Portman is retiring. He is very popular in the state, but although he's very popular in the state himself, and that doesn't really mean that others are going to be, because in 2018, you saw Sherrod Brown get reelected again in Ohio. He's a Democrat. He defeated Jim Renacci by around 7%. But of course, in 2016, just 2 years prior, Rob Portman won 58% of the vote. So it can definitely go both ways. It really depends on who the candidates are. But Sherrod Brown has proved that Democrats can still win in Ohio despite Trump winning these states by huge margins. It's really just who the candidates are. Who the candidates are really are important. It's really not as, party lines are important, but not as important as you may think. That's why you do have Democrats in states like West Virginia and Montana. As for Florida, of course, Marco Rubio is a pretty strong candidate in Florida. He will be running for a third term in 2022 and possibly run for president again in 2024 after his failed attempt in 2016. But Marco Rubio won, re-election in 2016 after his failed presidential run, won 52% of the vote. He's pretty popular there. Definitely can do very well in 2022. But Democrats, they do still definitely have the chance in Florida, and they really do in all of these states. Iowa, Ohio could become very, very competitive, like they were in 2020 in many of these states here. Florida, Rick Scott barely won. Ron DeSantis barely won. So all the Republicans have the edge in these states. If Democrats can nominate some really good, nice candidates, they definitely could have a very good chance. And finally, in Alaska, there's a possibility that Lisa Murkowski will get primaried. It's because she went against Donald Trump. She voted to impeach Trump and really has not been as supportive of Donald Trump as basically every other Republican in the Senate. And Lisa Murkowski in 2016 won 44% of the vote, won re-election, defeated Joe Miller, who is a Libertarian candidate, and there were 4 candidates here that both won over 10%. So this race was pretty crowded. So 44%, really not that bad. But in 2010, Lisa Murkowski won a write-in campaign, as you can see, a write-in campaign against Joe Miller. So Joe Miller actually won the GOP nomination, but Lisa Murkowski came back with a write-in campaign and defeated Joe Miller. And on top of that, for Lisa Murkowski in 2004, she won her first election in 2004 after being appointed basically by her father. So Lisa Murkowski won in 2004, and then 2010 she defeated Joe Miller in a write-in campaign. In 2016 she won pretty solidly. So Lisa Murkowski is very popular in the state. Alaska is definitely less partisan than many other states in the union. And then for 2022, if, they split, the Republican vote up again, say, Joe Miller becomes a nominee again, or some other Republican instead of Lisa Murkowski, it could be difficult for Lisa Murkowski, and a Democrat or independent who would caucus with the Democrats could definitely win, because you can see, in 2014, Dan Sullivan only won by less than around 2%. So things can definitely change in Alaska. It can, in Alaska, it's a state that's getting bluer and bluer, just a trend. If you go look back at the electoral history of the state, Trump only won it by 10%, so it can definitely be competitive. And, looking at the candidates, of course, things can definitely go the better or worse for the Democrats and the Republicans from there. So this is a possibility of the Democrats winning 58 seats. It would be definitely a stretch in Alaska, Iowa, Ohio, and Florida. It would be a little bit of a stretch in Missouri, but we'll see what happens there. But in states like Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Georgia, it's definitely within the realm of possibility, and it's pretty likely, actually, in Georgia especially, that Democrats hold on to or flip some of these Senate seats. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure you like it down below if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel if you have not. Comment down below how you think Democrats will do, and Republicans as well, of course, in the 2022 Senate races. And so yeah, subscribe to my channel if you have not. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.